couple things here is I always want to make sure that every author has an opportunity and a path towards publishing, because what that will do is that will make sure you continue on there to know and sort of not have this like, these 17 gates you got to get through to maybe have a shot. So now, again, assuming you put the time and the work and the effort in, there's a clear pathway for you to have your book out there and again to sort of open doors for yourself. So key thing that I would sort of say that we want to find out together over the next few months together is, number one, is the work you're doing publishable? Remember, that's the sort of the gatekeeper stuff we had before. And so what we're going to be doing in our positioning calls is that's one of the things I'm going to share with you. So when we sit down and talk about your books, I'm going to basically look at where you are, how you're doing, and sort of give you an early indication and say, hey, listen, this is actually pretty interesting. You may have something here. I think where you're based on where you're at, this seems like something that will have a market behind it. Now, for the most part, either authors will get one of two messages. Hey, where you at has that message, or I think we need to change some things, and it will have that opportunity behind it in those ways. But the idea is to sort of give you that early indication that there's something here that I think can have an audience and can get those 100 5-star reviews, right? Again, because part of that is like, you've never done it before, so how do you know like how big the market is in those sorts of ways? So that's the first one. The second thing then is there's a formal step that we have in the process. It's based on the quality of the words and sort of what we've seen in patterns that we call the greenlighting of a manuscript. And so one of those things that you'll sort of get some feedback on along the way is your manuscript sort of publishable? So if you guys have ever heard of this phrase in like the movie or television industry, when a movie is greenlit, means it's sort of approved to be produced into a movie. That's kind of the phase behind it. And so in the same sort of token here is that we've taken some of those principles and sort of help authors get a sense that their manuscript is publishable in that sort of way. Now, whether you decide to publish it or not is a different problem, but there's two sort of steps that we have in this process for you guys. So the first one will happen on January 12th. And so what will happen is, based on all the content you've created at that point, feedback from your editor and sort of review from a little board, they'll say, hey, listen, this is based on normal expected approval and those sorts of things and sort of progress. This is something that should be published into a book. So that's, again, the first one, just based on raw content, not based on structure and chapters. The second one is based on a full manuscript, sort of, again, first draft on the 24th. Now, the first one, again, I would sort of say the targets for you, we've talked about some of these ones, is based on word count and it's based on writing quality. So your editors are partially there to sort of give you feedback, also to sort of evaluate you as you're going, to sort of say, hey, listen, this is something that the writing quality is really high, or this is something that the writing quality is going to need work on, or where people are. So the first target is 20,000 words of okay stories. That's the goal. Remember, you're going to be turning yours in a little bit earlier, but this is sort of the target. Or let's just say you have a really high quality writing style and you've written a little bit less. Again, your editor will sort of recommend you and sort of to a board that will review it and say, hey, listen, this is sort of, again, publishable. That kind of idea behind it will give you that feedback. The second one is based on a full manuscript. So again, you've got a first draft manuscript structured as chapters, 25,000 words, and they're okay. They need some work to them, but okay. Or it's 20,000 words, and they're very high quality. The structure of them is sort of there. So this is sort of the first indicators you'll get that your manuscript is greenlit. What that does means is that you have an option to work with New Degree Press should you want, or you have an option to sort of, again, just know that it has enough quality that you could shop it in different ways that you want to in that way. But again, this is sort of that first phase of, is this even publishable? To sort of get that indication of, hey, there's something here behind that one. So you'll get those sort of feedback in January based on where your manuscript is. You'll get some early indications, but that's sort of those pieces right there. Again, the key thing to know is that you will know where your manuscript sits at that phase. Second one that we're going to talk about is kind of, again, like, okay, like, is there something here that I might want to consider for a traditional publisher, or should I consider different books? And so one of these things is it's a little bit hard to sort of know until you sort of dive into it. And so each of you are going to get an opportunity to do a publishing call with Brian. So Brian's one of my very first authors and now works for the publisher at New Degree Press on this specific program. So he'll sit down with you and work through these sorts of things with you and ask you some of those questions about where they are. And then the last thing that we'll sort of tell you is once you submit your first draft is this going to take more time, or is it closer to be published in that sort of way? And again, you won't sort of know that one until I read your first draft. So you'll submit a first draft the end of February. I'll read it and sort of say, hey, listen, Dustin, I think you're going to need an extra couple months on this one. Or like, hey, this is really good. I think with normal revisions, you'll get to that sort of phase in that regard.